What's going on, good people? You listen to the Good Culture Podcast, episode 65, powered by GoodCulture.life. It's your man, Kenny Reeves. I'm sitting there with my partner, T. Lee, and the lovely Miss Lauren Whiteman. What's going on,
people?
What's happening?
Y'all heard that pause. Sydney's not in studio today.
It threw me off.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It threw me off too.
But work teams. I know y'all know Whiteman. She is the editorial staff. She's one of the dopest people on the brand, but we have to move past her because we got another special guest in the building.
We do.
Good people, I need y'all to prepare your ears and welcome Mr. DeVon Franklin. Y'all give it up.
Hey,
yo. Hey. How we doing?
I'm doing good.
Good.
I had to get in there quick.
Right on. Thanks for having me.
So how you enjoying Dallas?
It's great. I've been in Dallas a lot over the years.
Okay.
So every time I come, I enjoy it. Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah. So it's good. You know, I feel like Texas is great. My grandfather was from College Station.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Huge Aggie fan.
Shout out to all the UT people that's listening.
So it's always feels like being home, being in Texas.
Okay.
We appreciate you coming through.
Oh yeah.
Just for all the good people out there that's not familiar with you, though, just let them know a little bit about yourself and what you do.
You know, I'm a producer. I produce film, and I'm an author. I'm on my fourth book now.
Okay.
And I also preach. And I preach. I don't have a church or anything, but I kind of preach. My uncle calls me a bootleg preacher.
It's all good. We know a few of those.
You know a few of them.
We call them jack legs down here.
Jack leg. I'm a jack leg preacher. And I'm married to Megan Good.
That's beautiful. A lot of people know about you, man, but we know about your author. We know about you being a producer. Talk to us a little bit about the journey in building towards getting into ministry, becoming an author and being a producer.
Yeah, it really was a organic process. I've always wanted to produce since I was a kid. As far back as I can remember. And, I was raised in the church, and a lot of times people were like, oh, you can't go to Hollywood. You're going to lose your faith. It's Sodom and Gomorrah. It's the devil's playground. And I just never believed that. I just believed that that Hollywood is where God wanted me to be.
Absolutely.
And so I pursued that. I got an internship working for Will Smith when I was 18 years old while I was going to college at the University of Southern California. Okay. And I did that for about 4 years. That's right, fight on. I did that for about 4 years and then became an assistant for a couple years and then became an executive. And I just really worked my way up. I was an executive for Sony Pictures. I worked on everything from The Pursuit of Happiness all the way to The Karate Kid, Jumping the Broom, Heaven is for Real, just to name a few.
Right.
And on that journey, I got presented with an opportunity to write a book, my first book, Produced by Faith.
Okay.
Because I was always outspoken about my faith, and I was always pretty clear that my faith was the path and the reason for my success. And that laid the foundation for the first book.
Right.
I wasn't thinking I was going to write. And then all of a sudden the opportunity presented itself, and I realized I had a lot to say. And ever since then, I've been writing. And a couple years ago, I quit my job at Sony and started my own company, Franklin Entertainment. And we're on our third movie already.
Okay.
The first movie was Miracles from Heaven. The second film was The Star. And now the third film is Breakthrough. It's a true story of a mother who prays her son back to life after he died falling through a frozen lake.
Oh, I saw that premiere.
The trailer's been out there. Yeah, we got 100 million views.
Us.
Yeah, exactly. Chrissy Metz.
Yeah.
And so that movie comes out April 17th of this year, just in time for Easter.
Okay.
And we got 100 million views on the trailer, and people are just really loving the film. We've been doing a lot of early screenings, so I'm excited about it. So that's kind of in a nutshell, just like the journey that's just been very organic that has brought me to this point.
That's dope, man.
So, yeah, that sounds exciting and it's very interesting, just digging back a little bit further. So you grew up in Oakland, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what we know down in the South about Oakland is E40, too short.
Yep.
A little bit of gang life, a little bit of, pimping, stuff like that. So for someone that's in the ministry, what was it like growing up and trying to avoid those pitfalls that sort of come with the natural environment?
Yeah, see, the thing about ministry for me was like, I just started preaching when I was 15, but it was never like, oh, I'm going into ministry. I was like, I'm going to the movie industry.
Okay.
So that was my focus. And even though, our church was based in Oakland, still is. I mean, the church I grew up in is on 70th and MacArthur, right in the heart of, so many things in East Oakland. But my mother sent us to school in Albany, which is kind of like a suburb of the East Bay.
Okay.
And so it's a very, very diverse, very mixed, right near Berkeley. And when we were in elementary school, we were going to school in Richmond, which was pretty sketchy. And then once we went to middle school and high school, we went to Albany.
Okay. So
that my mother made sure we didn't have to deal with some of the challenges in the Richmond Unified School District and the Oakland Unified School District. She wanted to make sure we got a good education. Okay. But ministry was never a thought, ever. It was just like, yeah, I preach, whatever. I'm going to movies. And I didn't really start incorporating preaching and just ministry, I guess you could say, until my mid-20s.
Okay.
And even now, I'm not a pastor. I don't have a church or anything like that. I just do it because I'm called to do it. I'm passionate about it. And it's just kind of a part of what I do.
Right.
Versus some that's their profession. Like my younger brother, he is a pastor.
Okay.
And that's his profession. That's how he makes his money. That's what he does.
Right.
For me, my profession is entertainment.
Right.
And God has given me the gift to preach. But I never take on that title of pastor because I don't want to do a disservice to those. That's their job.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not my job, and I would never want to disrespect that title ever.
No, much respect for that
Yeah.
because, like you made mention to, there are all those out there,
Jack
false
Leg.
prophets. And stuff.
There are, man. There are, and growing up, what was important though was my faith was always important.
Right.
And it was just something. Even though I had movie aspirations, I was always like focused on how do I honor God. What's the path? And I never was thinking of a path independent of him. So much so that even in my internship interview, when I got the job working for Will Smith, I told him, "Hey, I observe the Sabbath." At 18 years old, I said, "I observe the Sabbath, and if you want me to take the internship, I won't take it."
Right.
So I was clear up front when I got into the industry what my faith standards were. And even today, when I produce a film, you'll never see me work on the Sabbath. When the sun goes down, I'm out on a Friday night. So it's just important to incorporate it in everything that I do.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's real interesting to hear you talk about being a preacher so young, especially 15 teenagers. Was when typically hormones are moving pretty strong.
Is that right?
It's out here. I work with college students, so they full blown when they get to me. But so what's that like? What was that like when you are deciding that you're going to go into ministry at an age when most people are trying to be out here young, wild, and free?
Well, at 15, I only preached because they were like, it's our second, church was like, it's our second youth day. My older brother preached at the first youth day. And they were like, okay, DeVon, now it's your turn.
Oh, okay.
So that's what it wasn't like, oh, I want to preach.
I got one of those on my belt then.
I think we all do.
Yes.
And truth be told, there's a great motivational speaker, Les Brown,
Yep.
that it's just, seriously, if you want to get motivated, just pull up some speeches from Les Brown. He's still alive. He's still doing it. And he wrote a book called Live Your Dreams. And I probably quoted more from that than the Bible in my first sermon. It really was never about ministry. It was just about, okay, how do I walk out this faith?
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was, for the most part, it was fine, until I got to high school. My senior year in high school.
Okay.
Because, in the church, it's like, oh, you're supposed to wait until marriage. And then I was going to. And then senior year of high school, I didn't. But I wasn't telling anybody I wasn't waiting.
Right.
And so it really was years of this push and pull. And then when I got in my early 20s and when I graduated college, I was like, you know what? I got to wait. I got to align my personal life with my public life.
Absolutely.
And that really kind of began a path of learning how to navigate those hormones and still maintain holiness, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Which isn't always easy.
It's not.
Not
Just to
even.
put it plain. But the spiritual journey is amazing. Your origin story is beautiful. But to switch gears a little bit, we're here to talk about your newest book, The Truth About Men.
Yes.
In this book, you have a metaphor about the dog and the master.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about your thought process as you were writing that and setting that metaphor up for the readers.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Years ago, before I even wrote this book, I had this idea for the book.
Right.
Because, it's just like, man, when I was just looking at the culture and just seeing sometimes our behavior as men, and as I looked at my own, family history, and I was like, man, what is up with us as men? Why do we have a hard time being faithful? Why do we have a hard time staying true to our word? What's really going on?
Right.
And so when I began to think about the concept, this idea kept persisting, are men really dogs? Because we hear it all the time.
Right.
And I said, well, okay, let me unpack that for a minute. So with the book, I decided to turn it on its head. Mm-hmm. And I answered that question. I'm like, no, men are not dogs. We're not. However, when we don't operate in our strength, which is love.
Right.
Love is the most powerful force in the universe. And when we as men really practice that, there's nothing we can't become and nothing we can't do. The challenge is most of us are not taught to love ourselves. And as a result, we have a hard time loving others and receiving love because we don't always have it modeled for us. Many times as how we're conditioned to understand manhood is almost the antithesis of love. It's almost like we believe love makes us weak.
Right.
Love makes us show emotion.
Yes.
We want to survive. We want to be tough. So if we love, it's going to work against those things. So we're taught.
Right.
So as a result, we don't practice love very often. And sometimes most of us even have a hard time even saying, yo, man, I love you to another brother.
Right.
Because it's like, yo, that just makes me feel weak, even though that's a sign of strength.
These are facts, though. These are facts.
And so as a result, what happens is we give ourselves over to lust.
Right.
And I describe lust as a personal, a selfish impulse for personal, professional, financial, or sexual fulfillment by any means necessary,
Right.
even if those means are detrimental. And so I began to, when I thought about it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this dog idea and turn it on its head. And I'm going to say that, I think lust operates in men like an untrained dog.
Right.
What does that mean? It means that, no matter how adorable a dog may be, if it's not trained, it's a danger. It's a nuisance to everybody.
Right. It can tear some stuff up.
It'll tear stuff up. It only wants its pleasures to be met.
Right.
It has no discipline, has no self-control.
Right.
It's focused on what it wants all the time. And I believe as men, when we give ourselves over to lust, that's what we become.
Okay.
Everything in our world becomes at our pleasure, at our desire. We have no discipline. We have no self-control. We want our impulses met when we want them. And anybody that doesn't choose to do it, we discard, we move on.
Right.
So that's why I call lust the dog.
Okay.
But I call love the master.
Okay.
Because love is selfless. Love is the most powerful force in the universe, as I mentioned. Love of ourself, love of God, love of the woman in our life, love of our family, and love of our community. When we decide to put love over lust, master the dog, selflessness over selfishness, then we become the men we were called to be. And so using that analogy helped me articulate the problem, but also provide a prescription for the solution.
Right.
Here's how you get mastery. Here's how you get control. Here's how you tame something that most men don't know how to tame,
Right.
or sometimes even want to tame.
Right.
But I put in place in the book some information on how to do it, and also to bring women into the conversation to give them information.
Absolutely.
Okay. So just hearing you speak about lust, you define lust as things that most people don't. Lust can be something sexual in most people's mind, but you define it as basically just a desire, a passionate desire for, just
A
about
selfish
anything.
desire.
Yeah, selfish
money,
desire.
power,
Right.
success, so on and so forth.
So many times in ministry, different forms of ministry, people often suppress the
That's
thought
right.
of lust.
You're right.
They just want to dismiss it and basically pray it out of you, or hope it out of you, wish it out of, or whatever. So what are some things that you think people can incorporate into their ministry to really approach lust head on in the way that you see it?
Sure. I think the way to do it is to first recognize that even though lust in us is strong, love is stronger. Mm-hmm. So it's so often when we talk about lust, we talk about it from a standpoint of resisting.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about it from a standpoint of, well, what am I acting on?
Yeah.
So it's like, just resist, restrain.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't care how strong anyone is. If it's only a matter of restraint, eventually we're going to get weak.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
The strongest person is going to get weak. We have to find something positive to put that into that then helps us navigate restraint. So when it comes to navigating lust, it's so important to recognize that I do have love in me. I have this power, I have this force, but I have to learn how to cultivate it. How do we do that? It starts with acknowledging.
Right.
In the church, there's a culture of suppression.
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't talk about it. Like you said, we pray about it and say, oh, give it to Jesus. But I talk about this in the book.
Right.
I've been in church my entire life. I love the church. The church has made me who I am. I love going to church. But growing up, no one talked about how to manage urges.
Yeah.
Because this is where we fail.
Right.
Where you have an urge, you're holy, and you still get horny. What do you do?
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
These are facts, though.
Nobody talks about it.
Because
Super facts.
we
Nobody
were
talks
just
about it.
taught it's a demon. And I'm
Right.
like,
And I'm like,
I'm
but
10 years old, I don't even know what a
No,
demon is.
right. And so the reality is that no matter how holy you are, you have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No matter how saved, sanctified, feel the Holy Ghost you may be, you have it. We have it. So the beginning process is acknowledging it.
Yeah.
I have a whole chapter on accepting this, not because we are just accepting it from a standpoint of there's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
But anything I don't accept, I cannot change.
Yeah.
Yep.
If I'm in denial about something, I can never bring it into the light and do something about it.
Right.
When I'm in denial, it stays in the dark. So the way we deal with this is to buck against the culture of suppression, to acknowledge that we are spirit and flesh, to acknowledge that lust and love war with one another, to acknowledge that we have these urges and we need some help to figure out how to deal with it. So once we acknowledge it, the whole book is geared towards how to do it.
Right.
Okay.
You know, how to navigate urges. I believe the quality of our life becomes the sum total of the urges we manage
Right.
and how we manage those urges. Why do you see men become destructive in this area? Because we suppress, anything we suppress gets stronger.
Right.
And it comes out in the most destructive ways.
Right.
And I've found that sometimes just acknowledging, yes, I have an urge. It's here. Sometimes just the acknowledgement of it helps it pass.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same thing like a hunger pain. You get hungry just because you get hungry every time you don't have to eat.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I
Right,
mean?
that's facts.
So it's practical as that. And one of the reasons why with this book, I really wanted to focus practically on how to do it. Because so often we just say, oh, give it to Jesus.
Yeah.
Give it to God.
Right.
Right? And don't get me wrong. God's power, and I talk about this in the book, committing to God gives us the strength to want to do the work to become the best we can be.
Absolutely.
But it's faith and works.
Right.
Yeah.
And too often in this area, we just give it to faith. We have no works. This is why most people fail in this area, because we actually don't have practical works to put behind our faith.
Yeah.
That's real.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
That reminds me of that. You can't heal what you never reveal.
Yeah.
That
Well,
whole sentence.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
good.
Never
I love
know.
that. It's so true.
So thinking about the practicality of the book and what you're trying to do, I thought it was really interesting that you're focusing on godly relationships, because really we have a lot of stories and books about do's and don'ts for dating, fewer for godly dating. But what we do have for godly dating, I mean, our grandparents probably wrote those guidelines, and it just doesn't always seem like it's fitting for a modern relationship.
Wear your skirt, baby.
To your ankles.
Right.
They don't even make them very often anymore.
Yeah.
So what are some things that you think are the big differences between godly dating today in a modern context versus what we typically are used to?
Yeah, I think that, godly dating is intentional dating.
Right.
And I don't necessarily even mean intentional related to I'm dating you because I want to get married.
Right.
It just means I'm being honest.
State your purpose.
I'm being honest about what I'm dealing with, who you are, what I want, what I don't want. I talk a lot about this in the book, that especially for men, and this is why I'm so passionate about this book, because especially men of faith, we cannot get up and preach God, but then not allow God to show up in our dating life.
Well,
And too often that's what happened. We go to church, men will be on the pulpit or in the church, in the pew. And the thing about that is so deceptive is that if you're a man and you're going to church and you're in the pew and you're showing up and you're single, the women there have an expectation of like, oh, got it. Phew, I can breathe.
Right.
If this man is here, if I date this guy, he's going to be different.
maybe
Right.
some of the worst.
The most disappointing thing
You sound like you're
is when
talking
you
from
discover
experience.
that the
I
man
am.
is in the pew, but the pew ain't really in him.
Okay.
And that is deeply disappointing. It's one thing if you go to the club and you meet a guy in the club as a woman, okay, got it. I met him in the club. My expectation of what he's going to be may be lower.
Right. It's a 50-50 shot.
Man.
There you go.
Yeah.
But in the church, you're like, man, and then he turns out to be worse, or it seems to be worse because he's no different than the guy that you may have met in the
You
club.
set the bar higher.
Yeah, there
than
you go.
would
The
have.
expectation is different. So one of the things when we talk about godly dating, it comes with intention. And I talk about a lot this in the book. As a man, if you're dating with intention, be honest. What does that mean? Don't manipulate. What does that mean? Tell her if she's the only one.
Yeah.
Let her know. And also, just because she wants to date you, sometimes you have to have the woman's well-being as your priority, even more so than your fulfillment for companionship.
Absolutely.
What does that mean? Just because she wants to hang out, if you know in your heart of hearts this is not the right fit for you,
Right.
and just because she wants to hang and you could do it, say, no, man, listen, I don't mean you any good.
Right.
I don't want to hurt you. I know this, and it's, you know what? But it's better to have the truth now
That's
I
facts.
support all of it.
than to tell somebody, oh yeah, let's hang out.
Right.
And for months you leading this person on, hanging, making out, taking them to the movies, whatever, and then 8 months down the road, you're like, oh, I'm sorry.
Now I'm angry.
It sounds like
Exactly.
it's a culture of that. It's a lot of just mindless hanging out, a lot of mindless dating,
Netflix and chill.
casual
I mean,
Netflix and chill.
We can do that for a couple weeks and I'm be inconvenienced. You do this to me for 8 months.
But you know what? But it happens though, and I
Right.
think also for women, and this book is for women too. What I put in there for women is like, get out of a gray area. Get out of a gray area. What does that mean? It means don't allow yourself to be manipulated. How do you avoid manipulation? Asking questions.
Absolutely.
Asking questions in a dating sense. I believe there's an observation period where you get a chance to know, do I even like this person?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, do I want to hang out further with this person?
Absolutely.
In that period of observation, that's all it is. I'm just checking it out. Oh, you know, you're cool. Once you decide, you know what, I actually like you. I think this could be something. Ask questions. Who else are you dating exclusively? You know, what are you looking for? Where are you going in life? What are the things you're committed to? What are you interested in? What are your dreams? Why is this important? Because you got to know where the man's going.
Yeah.
To determine if that's where you want to go, and to know up front what you're getting yourself into. So often, these questions are not asked.
Right.
A lot of times, especially, you know, women and men go by feelings. Oh, this is great.
It's a
We're hanging,
vibe.
you know, and then you get months down into the situation,
Right.
months, and it seems like you're together, but you never ask the question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, a man knows, and y'all single men,
I'm married.
No.
you married. Sorry,
I'm
you single.
I'm engaged. but
You're engaged.
I'm single on
It's just-
Texas.
Yes. Okay. There you go. Before you got engaged, before you got married, before I got married, we were very clear what we told a woman and what we didn't.
Oh yeah.
That's facts.
So if we never verbalize we are together, in our minds, we're not together.
We're not together.
It don't matter how long we hang out. It don't matter if we see each other every day. Why this is so important information for women is to not allow a man to put yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
Here's what I want to know. Where you going, what you're up to, what we're doing. That to me, this is what godly modern dating looks like.
Yeah.
Where we are telling the truth, we're seeking out the truth because the truth is really what sets us free.
Yeah.
That's amazing. In the previous point, we was kind of talking about brothers in the pulpit preaching God but not living God.
Sure.
It's interesting because that's my next point. And it's actually a point made from your book where it says that we all have the dog in us.
Yes.
And I kind of found that interesting because right now we're living in a time where we're seeing some leaders and faith-based leaders actually publicly giving in to their dog. So my question is, should we as followers of Christ maybe lower our expectations of the leaders of the church? Should we humanize them a little bit, or should we still keep that same mindset that preachers and pastors shouldn't do certain things?
I would say that it's important to follow the word and let the word be the standard, not the person.
Right.
Because when we make the person the standard, we set ourselves up for massive disappointment.
Absolutely.
Because there's not one person that you or I look up to that can 100% not disappoint us.
That's facts.
Because we're spirit and flesh. Period. It just is. But God can still deliver a word to his people through people that are still challenged with navigating this balance.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when we say, you know what, that particular minister gave me a great word and that word helped me. Thank you, God, for the word. But I'm going to resist the temptation to put this individual on a pedestal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because there was a great pastor that I went to go speak in Mississippi, and he's an older gentleman, and we had such a great time, and he said something that I thought was so relevant to this. He said he was in a meeting one day, and he said to his staff, he said, I want you to imagine that there's a building, and he said, based upon your love for me, what floor would you put me on? And they said, oh, Pastor, we put you on the top floor, put you on the penthouse floor.
Yeah.
He said, you don't love me. He said, because that's how far I would have to fall. He said, if you love me, put me on the first floor. Because I'm just like you.
Right.
Don't elevate me.
That's true.
Yeah.
You can elevate what God is doing. You can elevate the word, but don't elevate me.
That's true.
Yeah.
And that's how I would answer that. I
Okay.
think there should be no exceptions.
Right.
And I think that's why I wanted to write this book. Let's just tell the truth.
Absolutely.
This is hard. None of us have it figured out.
Right.
It's a struggle for everybody.
Absolutely.
Whether you're in the pulpit or you're in the pew, we all struggle with this war
Right.
that goes on within our spirit between who we want to be and this thing in us that makes us want to be something totally different. And if we aren't honest about that, then we end up unnecessarily inflating people,
Right.
putting them on pedestals, and then when they show us their humanity, we say, how could you?
Right.
Doesn't make it right. I want to be very clear about this. We have to take accountability and responsibility for our actions. That's why we have to get control of the dog.
1000%.
That's why we got to master this thing so it doesn't master us.
Right.
No, absolutely. So just kind of piggybacking on that, you spoke about, being single or, being engaged or being married. if we have fellow brothers, or for the women, fellow sisters that they see are not living their best life, and the dog is kind of consuming them a little bit too much, do you think we have a responsibility to kind of tell her, hey, homeboy, chill out, help them master their dog a little bit?
Well, here's the thing. You can only help someone, quote unquote, master their dog if they allow it.
Okay.
And I think that's something really important, especially when it comes to the men and women. I think a lot of times women want to, master a guy or, quote unquote, train. You can't do that.
Right.
That ain't gonna happen.
I'm glad you said
They
that.
want
that ain't
to build
gonna
a
happen.
brother. Yeah, they want to build a brother.
No, however, if we're smart as men, we'll involve a woman in our process.
Absolutely.
Because the love of a woman is completely transformative for us. And so when we do that and we give her access, then she can help us manage it. But sometimes, women want to not manage, they want to mandate. Oh, you got to do it this way.
That's
you
a
got to
word.
change that way. And
Tell
it's
it,
like,
DeVon.
it's the truth.
Don't want to nod too much
but
right
we
now.
resist that. We resist that. We're like, no. I mean, baby, you can help me manage it, but don't mandate. Like, let me work on this and get it to a place where I can do it the way I need to do it. So I think it is really, really important to understand that. And if you have people in your circle, I have on page 128 in the book, I have the Master's Pledge, which is really a pledge to men. This is what we have to do to commit to in order to do the work. And a part of it is, if we see something, say something.
Right.
And if we see other brothers, especially that are going the way of the dog, that we have a relationship with, say, hey, bro, look, man, I love you, man. Dude, are you sure about this?
Right.
You know what I mean? Man, come on, dog. Like, come on, man. You don't mean her. We should start holding our brothers accountable in love.
Because black men don't cheat.
Exactly. And if you believe that, lightning's getting ready to strike right now.
I'm not even about to play with y'all today.
Go ahead, Wyman.
Bless the brothers. So when I first became familiar with you, it was common knowledge at the time that Megan Good had married a minister. But when I was able to first put a name with a face, you and her were on a book tour for The Wait. I believe you were at Teray's church, now Teray and Sarah Jakes Roberts' church. And there was a question from the audience that really wasn't a question. It was more of an audience member came to try to put Megan on blast.
It was a mandate.
Yeah, it was a mandate. Good podcast.
Oh, okay. It was a mandate. So instead of her asking a real question about y'all's journey or about her, it was pretty much to shame her for what she felt wasn't appropriate attire for a minister's wife to wear, or a saved person, probably most likely. And so I remember seeing it, and you corrected it. And you made sure Megan was good. And I remember all my friends was like, girl, she got a good one. Like, that's what I need, girl. So those were our conversations. But I thought it was interesting because so often when it comes to women and dating, our value often gets put into a box of, and we need to fit into this box of, we are pure enough to attract a quality man.
Sure.
And that's where our value is. And it's based on how we dress. It's based on how we carry ourselves. And what ends up happening is we get the brunt of what dating well and respectably looks like. So it's our job to be the pure ones in a relationship. Because if it comes down to it, we're going to catch the heat more than oftentimes a man is. Or it's, girl, how come you didn't do anything about that? Why'd you stay so long? Why are you dressed like this? If you would act more like a wife, then maybe you'd get a husband, those types of things. But your book doesn't do that.
No.
And
I'm tired of those things.
What was that an intentional thought process of making sure that this was not about burdening women about issues and I don't want you to say burdening men. I don't think that's what it was. But do you think it was an intentional point to make sure that women weren't carrying the brunt of these relationship
Absolutely, because I think I find those comments ridiculous.
Me too.
It's just it's just, man. I mean, the Bible says he that finds the wife finds a good thing.
There's some testimonies in the room.
You know what I mean? Like, and then it also, when you go back to Genesis, it says, God said, it's not good for man to be alone.
That's true.
Yeah.
He's the one that makes man was whole, and he breaks him
Right.
by taking out the rib.
The rib.
Creating Eve. Eve comes into the earth whole. She
Yeah.
does not ask, where is Adam? She does not ask,
Come on,
where is my
Jesus.
husband?
Right.
Adam is the one that says, I'm no longer whole.
Right.
She sees Eve. This is bone of my bone,
Right.
flesh of my flesh. For this reason will a man leave his mother and father
Yeah.
and cleave to his wife.
Right.
Why is that important? Because in the culture, even in the culture of the church, we try to tell, women, act like a lady, do this, do that. And then what happens is as men, we're conditioned to believe that just because we're men, we can get away with what we want.
Yep. True.
And I wanted to write this book to say, we got to stop. And women are doing their work. We as men got to step up.
Yeah.
What are we going to do in order to attract the best woman? What are we going to do to say, just because I'm a man, that's not an excuse for me to do what I want. My gender is not an excuse to just say, hey, well, just deal with it.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to write this book and help to change that narrative, because I just don't believe it. And I think it's done untold damage to women.
Yeah.
Because they are left to believe that they're not good enough.
Right.
They're not smart enough, not tall enough, not pretty enough. And men are just like, hey, we're going to do what we want.
Or we just get to put up with whatever gets
There
thrown
you
our
go.
way.
There you go. And because then it's like, oh, just getting him is the prize. I'm like, what?
Right.
Yeah.
No, that can't be it.
That's true.
And we as men, we can't live that way.
Absolutely not.
We can't live that way. We have to recognize that real power is found in the commitment and honoring. Adam said, this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. This is why I will leave where I am and go to where she is. I'm the one that's making the move. I'm not asking her to come over to me. I'm the one getting out of my environment to go to the right one. And if we could get back to that, I think we would see more harmony, more love, and more peace in our culture.
Yeah.
Amen
true.
again.
Hey man, look, you came on here and you spoke life today.
Amen.
Real quick before we go, I want to ask you, in the book you have a chapter called Discipline the Dog.
Yes.
And you kind of call for single men to become disciplined while they're single.
That's right.
I wanted to ask you this because I want to know how important it was for single men, because during this period of time, single men are kind of just doing what they want to do, wilding out, sowing their royal oats like Coming to America would say. How important is the discipline process for a single man? And for the single brothers that's listening, what are some of the benefits of becoming disciplined while being single?
Sure. Discipline is everything.
Right.
Especially when you can get discipline as a single man in the area of your love life. When you get disciplined there's nothing you can't do. And it's really, really important for a number of reasons. When you have an appetite in being single as a man, and you're just dating everything and you're dating everybody and you have no regard for anyone, you create an appetite that's very hard to curb once you get into marriage.
Right.
So as a single man, I'm not saying don't enjoy a period of freedom.
Absolutely.
And that's what being single is. You're unencumbered. You have the freedom to do what you want. You're only thinking about living for yourself. That's okay. I get that.
Right.
But there's still a way to be single, enjoy your freedom, but still be intentional.
Absolutely.
That goes back to the honesty and transparency. And just because you can date her doesn't mean you should date her. That's where the discipline comes in.
Right.
Because what happens is, men, if we don't get discipline in that area, we will become what we want, what that lust wants us to be.
Right.
Which is, we no longer think of women as people. We think of them as objects. Objects for what? Objects for our pleasure. So as a single man, when I was single, me getting discipline in this area, what did it do? It gave me the opportunity and the time to put that energy I would have otherwise spent dating into my career, into my purpose. So I'm 40 years old. I have my own production company. I have a deal with one of the biggest studios in Hollywood. I have movies coming out. I have books coming out. It's not about me putting myself on a pedestal, but because I was single and had discipline, I was able to use my 20s and 30s before I got married to lay a foundation for my success.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the benefit of a single man getting discipline in the area of dating.
Yeah, that's true, man. I actually had a period of time where I had to become disciplined. I was kind of embarrassed about my lifestyle at the time because I had to move back in with my mom. And at the time, I had several women. This is a testimony for everybody in the room. I had a lot of women, and I was living kind of reckless. But I moved back home with my mom. I was embarrassed by that fact. But at that time, the very first speech that my mama gave me when I moved back home was, I don't want a whole bunch of women in and out this house. So I kind of settled in and became disciplined because of the call that came from my mom. But I actually ended up meeting my fiance. So that's a testimony.
Wow. Amen.
Real quick.
Amen.
That's what happened.
There's a lot that we want to talk about. There's a lot that we want to get into, but DeVon has to go.
Yeah.
Before
we'll do part two.
We're going to part two tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or tonight if you're listening, because it comes out on Thursday. We'll be at Paul Quinn on Thursday night talking about the book. We can get a lot of details out. If you listen to the podcast, if you want some more, be sure to come to Paul Quinn, 7 p.m. on February the 21st. DeVon, before we go, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at DeVon Franklin, DeVon Franklin. You can also hit me there, same handle on Twitter, and on Facebook. It's at DeVon Franklin Official. And of course, you can come to my website, DeVonFranklin.com.
Absolutely, man. That's so dope, man. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
100%.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so
on.
much.
Thank you.
T. Lee, get us up out of here.
Hey, man, you've been listening to the Good Culture Podcast. We're here with Brother DeVon Franklin. My apologies.
It's all good.
Man, just spread love, spread positivity. And, man, y'all beat that dog in you.
Absolutely. It's the Good Culture Podcast. Let's
Bye,
go.
y'all.